I think the toughest ever filming day that I've done was in the Danakil Desert. For those of you who don't know, that's in Ethiopia. Some say it's the hottest place on earth. At one point I put because I knew it was going to be hot, so I took a thermometer with me, put it down on the sand, and it actually read 54 degrees Celsius. But I guess that's the conductive heat potentially from the sand, but it's hot. Makes Costa Rica look positively chilly. One day I was going into the middle of the desert. I was searching for these burial mounds, they turned out to be, but I didn't know what they were. I could see them from satellite imagery. It was for a series called Into the Unknown, but it wasn't a survival series, so I wasn't, having to, there were no artificial sort of layers of what I could and couldn't take into the middle of the desert. But I was on my own, and the way that locals go into the desert was using camels, and so I hired 2 camels. One of them only had one eye, and I'd never looked after camels before, and if anyone has looked after camels, they'll understand. I mean, compared to horses, I think, well, I can imagine that horses, especially when they're trained, are relatively easy to lead into a desert. These camels were beasts, and they wouldn't do what I wanted them to do at all. And I had to sort of learn these basic words in the local dialect in order to get them to sit down and move on and all of this. And in order to get them to stop, I had to hobble them, so you have to tie their legs together. And basically I had 2 camels because I had filming equipment but also a lot of water, and so just distribute the load. I didn't ride the camels, I thought that would be a disaster. I walked into the desert in the dark because I thought that would be a nice way of getting some miles under my belt when it's not too hot. But quite complicated filming anyway, so you got to put the cameras down. It was the days before me having a drone, so you got to put the cameras down, walk with the 2 camels past the camera, then bring the camels back because took a long time to hobble them. Anyway, thought I was doing really well. Marched through the sort of morning sunrise, beautiful, filmed it all, etc, etc. Just feeling a little bit more relaxed about the whole thing. Look back, and I've only got 1 camel. I'm like, oh my goodness me. So I could just see the other camel on the horizon, but it must have been at least 700 meters away. So slightly panicky because the one that I'd lost had got all my water on it. It chewed through the what do you call it? The rope basically. And so I had to hobble the camel that I'd got, which was I think the blind one or the one-eyed one, as quickly as I could, whilst self-filming the whole experience. Run after the camel. I mean, I now realise that if you run after a camel, you kind of spook it and it runs faster. So I should have very calmly tried to approach this camel, but quite hard to do that again when you're in the middle of the desert on your own and you've just hobbled 1 camel and you're legging it away from the only camel you've now got. So try and get the other camel. Eventually managed to get the second camel, brought it up. The first camel had managed to move and unhobble itself because I'm not an expert at these things. It was a chaos, and eventually got them both together, but probably lost half a day of walking. And obviously it's good footage, so all of these sort of disasters make good telly, don't they? But it was a beast to actually try and film that whole thing. But then just as I guess we were reaching about mid-afternoon, I felt awful. I knew I was going to be sick. I knew I was getting ill. And I was just like, right, I've got to make camp. And there was a little oasis, so just a little clump of trees basically in the middle of the desert. So I made a beeline for that, trying to get some shade. And as we were walking in, I thought I was going to vomit, but managed to hobble the camels, tie them up to a tree, I think, at that stage, and set the camera up. And I don't think, I'd like to claim this as an amazing framing of shot, but I don't think I realised that I got the camel perfectly in shot behind me. But I literally just had time to get my little scarf off and throw it on the ground, and then started being sick. The first one wasn't the sick of all sick, but the second one was, I've described this in a short before, but the second one was like Alexander Coffey, I think he's called. No, I was at school with him. Coffey in the Green Mile. The flies that come out of his mouth. It's just this dark energy. Anyway, I was on all fours. Absolutely, I've never thrown up with such velocity in my entire life. It was like evil was coming out of my mouth. But basically, I had used a goat skin or a sheep skin, I can't remember which one it was, in order to carry my water, because I thought, oh, that'll look nice and traditional. Used the traditional method, basically tied all of the limbs up and used the whole hide as a water bottle. But it was an old one. I hadn't killed the sheep, and it had been lying around for a bit, and it wasn't that sterile, to be honest. And whatever was in there danced with the devil, quite frankly. It was horrendous. So anyway, got it all on camera. But I mean, it's incredible how these things actually make the show. That sort of show, when I self-film, it's so much harder. You've not got a camera team around you. You're constantly having to not just go through the escapade or challenge or whatever it is that you're doing, but you've also got to set the cameras up, because if all of that had happened and I hadn't managed to self-film it, then it's almost, there's no point in the whole thing. That's the very crux of what makes, I guess, adventures exciting. So that was definitely my toughest day. One of the hottest places I've ever been to in the world, and I was sicker than I've ever been before, and I almost lost all my water. And then actually, when I woke up, there was it's quite scary actually. When I woke up, there was an Afar man. The local tribe around there are called the Afar, and the men sharpen their teeth. And I woke up under this tree, and this man just obviously thought, what on earth is this white man doing in the middle of the desert? The Afar are extraordinary people. They've evolved to be able to drink brackish water, and the only sources of water out in the Danakil Desert do have a lot of salt in them, but the Afar can drink it and survive on it. Only camels normally can drink that kind of water, but the Afar can. Anyway, I wake up, open my eyes, and I've got this grinning face looking down at me, but he's smiling, and his teeth have all been sharpened, which I think is a wartime kind of aggressive stance as a man, because it proves that you're pretty lethal, because your teeth are very sharp. Anyway, he took pity on me. He thought I was lost. I couldn't communicate to him in Afar. I couldn't communicate it to him in English either. And he walked with me for the next 2 days, because I couldn't convey to him that I didn't need his help and that I was actually out here on my own. And then when we met up did have a sort of support team that were helping assist the filming, and when the local Afar people that we'd employed started speaking to him, he was so gutted that he'd almost felt like he'd been tricked. He'd just given the last 2 days of his life up to lead me out of the desert, and obviously I couldn't politely tell the guy that I didn't really need his help. That was probably the toughest filming in terms of logistics of actually filming it. I think that was the toughest filming day of my life.